Hi, everyone. Ronald Ingram here, your rebel banker futurist, broadcasting live from the high desert of Nevada, overlooking the Luxor Pyramid. Wow. Man, my head is still spinning from day one of the neobank conference. I haven't reviewed any of the presentations in beforehand, and just too busy. And so I walked in completely fresh, and it was amazing. It was like it was all rehearsed. Well, I guess we have an agenda to follow, but just the points that all the speakers were making. Starting off with Colin Carr for Tim Scott's office, the head of the Senate Banking Committee and chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, and Colin Carr, the head of the Financial Institutions office for Tim Scott in his office. And everything was just exactly perfectly scripted to just clear evidence that everything that we're doing with Spock, with BROK, is spot on. So I'm talking full validation, exactly on the right track, and it feels incredible. So we're also getting a massive wave right now of new followers pouring in, real opportunities, solicitations, and even newbie groups reaching out who want education on all of this. I love every bit of it. The energy is electric, and I'm exceedingly grateful. And I'm grateful to this community. And you remember what this is, right? This is an ancient symbol. It predates Spock by a few thousand years. And it is actually a literal blessing, and it does mean live long and prosper. So when I do this, I'm blessing you. I'm blessing everyone that's watching this, and it's my pleasure to do so. So, and thank you for being on this journey. And it is exciting, and we're very early, just getting started. It's only been a little over 30 days now. Market cap, of course, starting from zero, 20, 40, 60K. Now we're in the millions, or over a million in market cap. So I think that's a fairly unprecedented pattern. I remember, and I also had a really very interesting and very useful meeting with a group of ladies. We hosted an event here at our home for influential ladies of Las Vegas, kind of the greatest influencers and movers and shakers that are resident here in the Las Vegas area. And it was very illuminating because I went through a presentation, started out with my blessing, went through the presentation, and then we walked people through opening up their wallets. Most of them had never had a wallet before. And every single person that we invited came, plus a couple. And we intentionally didn't want to have too large of a group. There were many more people that we could have had, and I'm glad that we didn't invite any more, because the process of onboarding was very illuminating, and after I thought about it, a little bit frustrating. Evidence of an opportunity there to be solved. Let's say that. The frustration that I referred to is it was easy to download. Everyone got the wallet right away, and I sent everybody the sharing is caring plan. We had that plan that for the first 30 days or so and that's over now. But we'll do something similar. But we would give away 5,000 SPOC to people that were opening their first account, their first wallet, and buying their first SPOC. And so initially that was like 9 cents, right? Now it's like $7. It was around $6-7, right? So that's starting to add up. So we're gonna, I think, that was a limited plan, and we'll do other things in the future. But but anyway, enough on that. That was what was interesting, though, was the amount of enthusiasm, and it was structured as a educational program, and that's what we are doing, because I think that everybody, and this is what I explained to the ladies, is that there is this convergence happening, and this ties into the conference. This ties into the memo, right? That is so key, that came out on April 28th, that clarifies. Even this is outside of the Clarity Act, but this clarifies what crypto assets and federal securities laws are regarding crypto assets and digital commodities, laying out specifically what digital commodities are, and giving specific examples. Great for those tokens that were mentioned as examples. Obviously, Bitcoin was in there, but also Shiba Inu, Dogecoin, Polkadot. Some coins that, like Dogecoin, that started out as a pure meme coin, right? But they've adopted, they've caught on and have traction. So they are, deemed to be legitimate digital commodities, and all of, and the whole framework for what is a digital commodity is now very clearly defined in this little one-page handout. And Solana is, of course, mentioned on there. So which is great, and I think key for us and for a lot of programs that are built on the Solana system for expedience and speed to market and all the things that Solana is great for. So it was presented as an educational event. So because the best way to learn is by doing, and this is a great thing to share with your friends and family. And a good way to do that is with SPOC. We've boiled it down into, maybe I'll put this in the I have it on Telegram, actually, because you can attach PDFs on Telegram, and I've got pictures of the first page, which is all that you need. But I've also got a 3-page PDF that is maybe it's only 2 pages, that lays out in 3 simple steps. The 3 simple steps for complete newbie to get running and with SPOC. And so the only hitch came when people tried to fund their account. And it's interesting, the banks apparently, so first off, credit cards, you can't really fund, it doesn't seem like credit cards ever work for funding crypto wallets. And the debit cards work, Venmo works, but even with the debit cards, and we've found that some banks, some credit unions as well, we had people who were on their phones with their bankers, and these are affluent people that are sophisticated, smart, and have good relationships. All of them have private banking relationships, what passes for private banking these days. And so, but at least they can a banker will pick up the phone when they call them. And so there's blocks set up, and automatic holds set up and things like that. And so a lot of people had to call their bank, and even then a lot of people were running into automatic, if they didn't have to call their bank, they're running into automatic limits of $500 per week. And so it's kind of frustrating. I was very excited about how everyone came, everyone downloaded a wallet, everyone got their SPOC, everyone ended up being able to buy their SPOC, but many of them only, did like a very minimal amount because their bank wouldn't let them do more. So when you think about it, it's like you'd like for people to be able to act while this is top of the mind, especially when you're talking about very busy people. They want to do it and do it right out of the gate. And so that was a big challenge. And so that sets up what I'm going to talk about, sort of where we go from here. But people were excited about it, and you can definitely see that everyone gets that there's this convergence. The regulations are coming, and now we've got artificial intelligence that everybody expects. Banks want it, some more than others, but regulators kind of expect it to be used, I think, and certainly are not averse to it. More, if anything, reading between the lines, they haven't, in announcements that have gone out, the way I read it from my point of view, non-lawyer point of view, is that there's almost an expectation that banks will use AI in decisioning. And of course, banks have been using what they call AI in flagging alerts, anti-money laundering, all of that kind of thing for a long time. But those are just neural networks, and that's not truly, those aren't large language models. Those aren't real, none of the AI that would pass the Turing test. All of the AI that we have now, if people aren't familiar with the Turing test, that was a test that up until a few years ago, people were dubious that a computer would ever pass this test, which was a test proposed by Alan Turing, the famous cryptographer from the Second World War. As a movie about his exploits in deciphering Nazi codes using machines, using some of the first most powerful computers ever devised. And so he's very, very highly revered amongst nerds like me. So, but he proposed a test that an AI would be deemed intelligent if it could pass as a human, basically. And so that there's parameters around how the test works. So basically, without seeing who you're talking to, if you can carry on even a textual message in such a way that the person on the other side can't tell which one is a human and which one is the machine, then it's said to have passed the Turing test, right? So, and a lot of people didn't think that would happen, but now we've just blown past that. In fact, there may be tests one day where people have to prove that they are a machine, like the open claw, like Moltbook, right? For agentic AI, where it's a social media platform for autonomous agents, and for autonomous agents to talk to each other. And I could envision a day where machines talk amongst themselves, and human can't enter that group. There's this closed group of, anyway. It's pretty. We've come a long way since thinking that we wouldn't be able to pass the Turing test. So anyway, the AI was a big topic, and here, this was really like from Colin Carr. From Tim Scott's office and the Senate Banking Committee said that, paraphrasing, that explainable AI is something that is expected, necessary, something that's being looked at very carefully. And then, there will be, of course, everything is couched in parameters and with disclaimers, and there's biases, right? You need to make sure that the AI decisions are not biased. There's a framework of regulation around that. Not a difficult task to sort, but you just have to make sure that your model is not making decisions based on race, right, and discriminatory things like that. So not that difficult to pass, but something that banks often avoid, risk-based pricing, because they're worried about getting accidentally caught up in an accusation of having made a discriminatory choice, right? Because the pendulum had swung so far where it was almost inverted discrimination. So that being said, the key takeaway is that everyone gets that there's no doubt that explainable AI is a necessary piece, and the only solution that anybody had or has right now that was part of the discussion is our solution, which is BROK, basically, with the underlying components. So with the Ingram evaluation, so the Ingram evaluation matrix, that part of it in particular, the NEO score feeding into it, but the Ingram evaluation matrix that provides the explainable AI that is necessary right now. That meets the moment perfectly for banks. So that's very big. And there is, got a growing list of banks and probably after this conference, that list will increase. But I'm not, and this may sound odd, but I'm not rushing to close those transactions because I have come to the realization that the solution serves more than just banks. The same, and even just in the financial segment. So this is where you even brought it up. For all the bankers to hear, all the member institutions, those who are there and those who are not there, who can view the everything was recorded. So a lot of people review the recordings long after after the initial live event. So it's there for all time now, and bankers can see me talking about your super robo genius private banker. That is what BROK is to be. And for bankers, that is their sidekick, their non-certified genius who will assist them in any of the tasks that relate to their bank, specifically related to underwriting, but anything generally. My bank is not using my own technology. I have to keep things there's regulations that mandate what is often referred to as a Chinese wall, to make sure that there is absolutely no bleed through or bias in choice of vendors. So where an owner has a vendor, there's a lot of things that have to be very careful with there. So using a subset of my system that is but not my system. Already bank policies have been policies and procedures have been updated in what would have taken months, in a few days. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the underwriting as being that moves the needle for a bank. If they can do a small bank can do a couple more loans in a month, 500,000, $100 million type, $1.2-3 million transactions. That moves the needle quite a bit, and they're not going to mind at all using spending $4 to get one more check or actually not even a check. The check is the NEO score. Another data point. They're not going to mind getting another data point to help reduce the risk of a loan that doesn't perform well. And they're also not going to mind paying for the Ingram evaluation matrix for a full report. And it's pennies for, in comparison to the real dollars that are involved in large financial or any kind of loan is big enough for to make that well worth the investment. So that was one big takeaway. Another one was we had a global expert today from on neobanking globally, and interesting to see the patterns there. People are leaving their bank or indicate a willingness to leave their bank if their bank doesn't support their crypto expectations, if the bank doesn't support innovation and new products, in particular crypto. So you see how this is all connected, right? And looping back to where I said with this ladies function, how the difficult part was funding the wallet, and that made, and these people, every single person that was in attendance at this meeting, at this event, they are high value customers for their banks, and their banks would not want to lose them. But it's getting to the point, and I've now seen this in other countries as well. So this is what you're supposed to do as an entrepreneur, is like get in there and see what the user experience is today, and look at the interface, look at the user interface and how it can be re-engineered to make it better. So so that is a big takeaway from the conference. And there were a number of other points that were very supportive of what we're doing. There was a quote from Dr. Kevin Streff, the dean of the institute, who also presented, and he said, AI, something to the effect of AI is the future of banking, or will be banking. This is not like an incremental thing. So there's news about Anthropic, I believe, integrating Claude into a core processor, which is the main processing platform that banks use for their general ledger and almost everything else. That is, all other systems tend to be integrated into, the larger the bank, the larger the integrations, they'll be integrated into one or even more cores. And one of the big ones is FIS. And so that's being touted as, wow, that's so smart. Anthropic is partnering with FIS. They're going to get into all the banks. This is dumb. I'm just, I don't care if that's controversial, because I'll tell you right now, the weakest link in banking already was the core processor, and particularly, and some of these processors, I won't mention names, but many of the largest processors, they can do everything. So the sales guy goes into the bank and he says, yeah, we can do that, we can do that, we can do that. But what you don't know is that they're talking about 10 different systems, which have been consolidated and integrated down to like 4 different systems. And then you choose between 2 or 3 systems. And then each one has some things and not other things. And so you have this menu, this huge menu, but you can't eat everything at once. And many bankers don't even know exactly what it is that they need from the menu. And this is where BROK comes in, because there are things that are very simple that you do every day that move the needle, that impact revenue. And when it impacts revenue immediately, like so many of these things are sort of esoteric to the bank, and so they introduce a new module for ID verification that's part of their core, and then everyone gets trained up on that, and then now they've done some training. This is not that kind of a change. Introducing BROK, my Agentic Stack, fed by the Ingram Evaluation Matrix, in particular the brain. That's the brain, to make AI decisions explainable, exactly, which is exactly the main expectation, the main concern in the industry from regulators, and also customers would be a lot happier. There's a reason that regulators are pushing for that, because customers are dissatisfied with getting their accounts shut down for no reason, or being declined for a loan without a very clear reason, right? So that there needs to be greater transparency. There already was a lack of transparency in these types of decisions. So that's it's a push and a pull. It needs to happen. So, and it really moves the needle. And so and this could be completely independent from a core. And in fact, that is what the majority of banks are going to do. Now, not some of the big banks, And the example it goes back to an example that keeps on being highly relevant to our situation here, which I call the VisiCalc moment, where PCs first became ubiquitous in business. Prior to the spreadsheet, they were just for gaming and entertainment purposes. After the spreadsheet, and they had real business utility, then every business had to have it, and PCs, they needed the software, they needed that function, and therefore the PCs became ubiquitous. That's what we're talking about here. There's another situation like that where bankers that I've demonstrated this to are like literally jaw-dropping for them, in literally. And when they see a credit memo generated in a few minutes that meets their expectations or exceeds their, here's the thing, a lot of tech companies don't understand, and even the processors don't, the processors generally just provide everything. And so then the bank buyer looks at this huge checklist and say, this checklist is the longest. It's got the most features and functionality. And so we need the best. And so that must be the best. And that's not the way. You need to look at what your business needs are first, right? And but there is the problem also of not knowing what is possible. For example, every bank in America would be using NeoScore right now if it were available to them, if they knew about it. But they don't know about it, and they don't know that it's possible, and they don't know that there's this other method of scoring that's complementary to a traditional credit score. So they can keep that, no disruption there, but they can add to that and maybe reduce the number of bad loans, optimize, maybe underwrite customers with thin files that don't meet regular credit bureau bank criteria that are provided by credit bureaus, et cetera. It's already something that every banker that I talk to is interested in, not as much as the Ingram evaluation matrix for making that's where you really move the needle on revenue and saving related to loan losses, because it's anybody can grow their loan portfolio, but making good loans obviously is you don't want to just you need to be making good loans, or your bank isn't going to last very, very long. So, and all of this relates to everybody though. So everybody can that has a financial decision to make in their life, everybody that transacts, anybody that has a bank account would benefit from having. There's no reason, for having their own super genius robo-banker in their pocket, right? And so seeing the friction that I've witnessed from live interactions with numerous dozens now of newbies, they're coming, in droves, and spending time with them, listening and walking them through and see where the hitches are, where the friction is. I envision now, so a part of what BROK's role will be is connecting, or maybe even obviating the need for a traditional wallet for a newbie. Everyone that is experienced in crypto, they're attached to their wallets. They want the controls. It's kind of like the difference between automatic and standard, right? Drivers prefer still standard. Gives them more. It's more. They like the feedback, right? Same thing with crypto. Crypto power users, people that are experienced, will want to keep their wallets, and then also then there's the whole question of hard wallets. I know that, but that only becomes a real factor when people start having larger balances, right? And I'm telling people to just start small. I'm actually discouraging people from putting in huge amounts, and just putting in a comfortable amount, like their wine budget, or their lunch budget, or their coffee budget. That would be plenty, right, to get started. And for people that are getting started, and the more experienced people that get what we're talking about and see the potential, then they do what they feel comfortable doing. But this is going to be a very long-term project, because Spock is works now. Spock is the token, the secure, privately owned credit key, is the way I explain it to bankers, and that's what their accounting department, when they won't even, Spock won't even really register for the decision makers, the economic buyer at a bank. That's just the mechanics of how they pay for and how usage of the Ingram evaluation matrix and the NEO score are utilized. With a scarce supply, so that so similar to Bitcoin, but also with burns, that utilization burns tokens, and therefore also increases the scarcity. So once we get live with these programs, then the mechanics are going to kick in, where it's the value starts to go up, not based purely on speculation and on how genius the ideas are, and the requirements which are specified, and the intellectual property, which is very valuable and gives us a moat, and all of that. The next step is to see the actual mechanics working, so that you see the economic system working, and that driving the cost, and then that will increase also the investors tend to be looking in the future, right? So as soon as they see that start to happen, then that is going to have, I think, a big impact on people's comfort when they see that the more and more the execution coming. And we've already executed on quite a few things. We already have the MBC 20 protocol baked into the token design, and the inscriptions, and the X402 protocol built in for utilizing the internet's original structure for agentic commerce. All of that is already built in and tested and working. Next step now is, after this conference, is going to be, and this is where I'm going. I am going to the transparent truth is, the fact is, I love the momentum in the community. I really need to do a deep dive and get our Agentic Stack fully operational now, ASAP. And that's where our focus has to go right now, because I've been saying we're really close, and the goal is simple: just get this fully operational as fast as possible, and responsibly, because we're dealing with financial transactions, and I'm currently, just in full transparency, I'm weighing two paths right now. One is an expedited route that will utilize existing messenger apps first, so Telegram or WhatsApp or a messaging app like that, where you can communicate using, and Telegram is good because you can attach documents and things like that already, but mind you, the documents have to be PII redacted. We have to strip any PII and that's all part of it. But a very fast path is to utilize an existing messaging app as the interface, and that'll be, I think, and that'll be a good. Everyone could use that. So some of the early adopter banks will use that, and power users will be fine with that, and that will prove everything out and get us live and get the economic engines revved up and get this thing fully self-sustaining very, very quickly. And the other path is a fully dedicated custom app that build from the ground up. And yeah, and I've got some wireframes already, and ultimately that would be more polished and scalable for the long term. For this is where we get to every wallet in the world is my dream, and every because anyone over the age of 15 needs, and even younger than 15, they need a piggy bank at least, right? So here's your digital piggy bank, and here's your method for parents to provide allowance and control it with contracts and visibility, way much more so than you could with a debit card. And yeah, so what family wouldn't benefit from having a super genius robo-banker as part of their household, and then one for each member of the family, probably fairly early on. They want to have that, and that may almost become like the new way of banking. And I was hearing other people, they hadn't quite connected those dots yet necessarily. Maybe they didn't articulate it, but that is what they're talking about when they say AI is the banking of the future, and it's not avoidable. So that's why I'm so passionate about reaching out to the folks that I care about that aren't involved at all yet in this space, so they can get educated and start having some awareness. And then, but now seeing the friction, a way that I can handle all of that is, that's certainly within the scope of what, handling wallets and wallet transactions is always been in the scope of what BROK would do. And so it takes care of multiple issues. So we start out, I think probably start out with the Telegram Telegram or WhatsApp type messaging interface, and then go to a full app. And so now that day one of the conference is officially on the books, that was the heaviest lift, and it feels like that's lifted a bit, so I can multitask a little bit better and stay connected with you all. So I'll keep connecting, but I'm going to be pushing harder on the infrastructure. So so the roadmap is crystal clear, deep focused work on the Agentic Stack to keep it humming at full capacity. And I think this phase is actually going to flow more naturally than it might look from the outside. I'm excited to bring you along as it comes together. We're going to keep these lives going, of course, every 2 days, and this conference was a heavy lift, but like I say, that the heaviest part of it, day one, is over. So I'll be able to right away dive in. But I want to be sure. I want to make sure I don't overcommit, overpromise, right? So, but I think this with some focus, we can knock this out pretty quickly. So, so that's it. So it's not just the interface, of course, has to be connected to the income evaluation matrix, and it has to be connected to the NEO score, and so all those things need to plug in. But it's pretty, the roadmap is very clear. The requirements are very clear. A lot of them are the high level, the necessary level of detail is been fleshed out. It was necessary to get a patents filed, right? So got all that, and now it's time to really get that out. Also, do a few fun things. Take a sip from my spot cup. going to, in parallel, I can do more than one thing at a time. So like I say, we'll continue with communications, and maybe even, because the stack helps me amplify communication too. So depending on the order, I might actually see an increase in communication. But again, I don't want to overpromise. Won't be any less, that's for sure. And then, yeah, we'll continue with live streams every 2 days. So day after next at 6 p.m. And that is so also I've got my book and that's going to be, so that's perfect timing actually. So right after we get the MVP out through the minimum viable product where everything works, we have access to the Ingram evaluation matrix. We can put out a credit report for a loan memo for a bank, or help people with their wallets, and a simpler onboarding process to get connected directly to Spock, make the funding flow to Spock really direct, and so that people can, and then make the transfers, from to and from value exchanges using Spock, and the machine-to-machine value transfers using Spock, get all of that operational and running. And then that's when, after we get the book out, that's when the professional marketing. We haven't really, this conference and this first event that I had here in Vegas, extremely successful. We will do more of those in the future, but I don't want to. I've got all the information that I needed to from this first event, and the next event, it'll be a different interaction, so people will be able to, and we'll see the difference, how the onboarding is, and how people interact with BROK and Spock, and the Agentic Stack after that is put in place. Also, we'll see some real live transactions between machines happening. And like I keep on saying, no one really knows how big that's going to be. I think, and I will predict that there probably is going to be some controversial things that are going to come up. Like you might have seen, I commented on Open Claw Bank, I think it was called. Somebody set up an LLC. Somebody had something like a BROK, I guess, like an autonomous agent that has banking and business capabilities and expertise. Get an EIN number, tax number from the IRS. Apparently, opened up an FDIC insured bank account, and a bunch of other things. Basically, showing that an agent could set up the whole thing, right? I tell you, I'm a rebel banker, but that was reckless. I would not want to be the bank, because I can tell you that I am guessing that the bank accounts that were opened, probably the bank didn't know, and that's not a very good answer either. The bank can't say, "Oh, I didn't know that an AI opened up the bank account," but it's probably through one of the banks that have a lot of fintech partners. And this is why regulators expect banks to have you're responsible as a bank for any partners that you have, and any technology that you use. You're expected to do diligence to sometimes 2-3 levels deep. So if you have a vendor, you have to not only do a deep dive on that vendor, you have to look at the vendor of the vendor, and maybe even the vendor of the vendor of the vendor, to make sure that everybody is SOC compliant, is PCI compliant, is not going to be violating any of the regulations. So even if they're not a bank, ultimately a bank is responsible, and the responsible banks will that don't get shut down, they push all that down. And this is how I knew that I could buy a bank, right? Because starting out as a fintech and as in the neobank side of things, I was experienced to having banking partners push all of the requirements that they were going to be on the hook for with regulators, pushing all of that down to, so that I was doing all of the heavy lifting, but the bank had to do it as well. So belt and suspenders type approach, right? Total redundancy. And there are some things that only the bank could do, but a lot of the things are pushed down to a fintech. And so fintechs have to be very mature even to get a partner, get in the door, to even get a bank to talk to them. And that's why. And because a bank isn't going to educate a new fintech that has, you could be the most brilliant engineer in the world, but if you don't understand anything about banking and banking regulations, and compliance, and all the AML rules, and even recognizing that many of them are, as I often say, especially in the U.S., overdone, overblown, we're overregulated. But we do either. I'm not saying that we don't need regulation, and at all, right? So that ends up being a pretty big burden for a lot of new entrants. So, and yeah, so this company that enabled, whoever owned the AI, that enabled the AI to go, and maybe it's okay with the IRS. I don't know. But I know that the banking side of it, the regulators will that bank is looking for an audit pretty quick if they're letting robots open FDIC insured bank accounts, because you just can't do KYC on a robot yet. And that's not a problem. It doesn't stop machine to machine commerce, right? But we're doing it the right way. And you just, you don't need to have the agent do that. You could have it help you with all the forms and the paperwork and everything, but there has to be, even with a ZPE, there has to be one human at least, and that owns the thing. And in the current environment, until until robots start having absolute free agency and are determined to be, completely autonomous and have human rights or something like that, that's not something that's going to fly. So that's the roadmap. It's going to be more focused on dev milestones. So again, I don't want to box myself into overpromising. So, but we'll give you an update the day after tomorrow at 6. And so we're going into production mode, into shipping mode now. And that's going to be very exciting. So it's been a lot of talk lately, and now we're going to do a lot of walking, if you will. So that, I think, covers it. So that is that. And on the biohacking side, I'll just give you an update. If you want biohacking tips, just drop a comment or a question, or even just say, let's say, longevity or biohacking question mark, in the comments. And I'll make sure that I include some more specifics for you next time. But I am continuing on that. That is, haven't stopped 1 second every day, following my routine, my protocol. And it's close to, past due for my blood work time. So we'll get to see what my biological age is now after 3 months of the latest version of my protocol, which hasn't changed much actually in the last 6 months. So that will be interesting, and fingers crossed that is we see another reduction in my biomarkers, and I get a little younger. And so I'm 25. The delta right now is 25 years. So from my age at the worst level of health to the last time I did my blood work 3 or 4 months ago. So pretty good. That's actually world class in the leaderboards where they measure that. That's part of my goal, as I mentioned before, is going after the X Prize, Health Span Prize. So I've got a protocol, and there need to be a lot more. It's not enough for one person to hit a 25-year delta in biological objective biological markers, and these are objective. My lab work is all done by a third-party lab corp, and so yeah, that'll be exciting to see where we're at. And so yeah, please stay engaged and lock your funds up, because there also might be, I think we've seen some profit taking, and I'll just, that's short-sighted. I haven't sold anything yet. I'm only a buyer, but I won't talk about it's people, do what you want to do. And like I say, SPOC will continue at any level. The utility is there. And I think this should give you comfort to know that this is more than just this isn't just purely about the valuation based on hype, right? Which is, frankly, meme coins are like popularity contests. Who's got the coolest look for the moment? And that doesn't age well, as we've seen in recent months and in recent year. The lifespan of a meme coin is a day. And after 99 point something percent fail in the after the first day. So we're well into we're past 30 days now, and I've gone through that, and we're building. We're building one layer upon layer upon layer, and and awareness is going to keep increasing, and there's going to be more excitement, and it's not going to be based on hype. It's going to be based on real deliverables. All right. Live long and prosper, everyone.